You didn't arrive here alone. Even when it felt like everything was falling apart in silence, something was moving with you beneath the surface. Not a coincidence, not random timing. A pattern you couldn't see yet was shaping every turn you took. The moments you thought were empty were actually occupied by an unseen alignment. And now, as this frequency settles in, there's something you're beginning to notice. Your story was never disconnected. It was guided through layers you were never meant to understand at the time. Because you were never alone in this. Something was always with you, adjusting everything in real time. 1. Presence existed before you noticed it. Presence existed before you noticed it, long before your awareness ever had the ability to recognize what was already in motion. It wasn't something that appeared when you began to think about it, and it wasn't something that started only when you became conscious of your experiences. It was already there, quietly holding the structure of your path, operating in a way that didn't depend on your attention to continue existing. What you call arrival of awareness is actually a delayed recognition of something that has been functioning continuously, like a signal that was always broadcasting, but your perception only tuned into it at a later point in time. The presence didn't begin with your understanding of it. Your understanding simply caught up to something that never stopped moving. There are moments in life where events feel sudden, as if they appear without preparation or background. But beneath that surface experience, there is always a layer that has already accounted for what you are stepping into. The presence does not react after the fact. It holds a kind of silent continuity where what is about to happen is already woven into the structure of what is happening now. Even your confusion was never separate from it. The state of not knowing, the sense of uncertainty, the feeling of being disconnected from direction, all of that existed inside the same field where presence was already active. It did not disappear during your uncertainty, and it did not wait for your clarity to begin functioning again. It remained consistent, regardless of whether you could detect it or not. What you experience as beginning is often just the point where awareness becomes sensitive enough to notice patterns that were already in place, like stepping into a room that was already built before you entered it, but only now realizing the structure, the design, and the logic that was always supporting your movement inside it. Presence does not announce itself. It does not need recognition to operate. It does not become stronger when you notice it, nor weaker when you ignore it. It simply continues, forming the invisible foundation behind every shift you go through. Even when your life feels fragmented, even when events seem disconnected, there is still a consistent layer holding everything in alignment beneath what appears as randomness. The important shift is not that presence begins, but that awareness begins to notice it. And once this notice happens, the experience of your own timeline starts to feel different. What once looked scattered starts revealing structure. What once felt accidental starts showing coordination. And what once seemed like separate moments starts revealing continuity. Presence was never something you had to reach. It was something you were always already inside of, even before you had the language to describe it. 2. Nothing you experienced was isolated. Owls Osei, Owls Osei, Owls Oger. Nothing you experienced was isolated, not even the moments that felt completely separate from everything else. What appeared as individual events, scattered across different times and emotions, were actually connected through an underlying structure that doesn't reveal itself on the surface. To the mind, life is often divided into fragments. One situation here, another situation there, each one carrying its own emotional weight. But beneath that division, there is a continuous field where nothing truly exists alone. Every experience carries echoes of what came before it and silent influence over what follows. Even when two moments seem unrelated, there is often an invisible continuity between them. Something in one phase of your life sets conditions for another phase, even if the connection cannot be logically traced in real time. It is not always a visible cause and effect pattern, but more like a layered sequence where one state of experience prepares the conditions for the next. When something unexpected happens, it often feels like a standalone interruption. But what you don't see in that moment is how many unseen elements were already moving toward that point. Decisions you made without full awareness, emotions you didn't fully process, timing you didn't understand, all of it contributes to outcomes that appear sudden only because the intermediate steps remain hidden from perception. Isolation is a perception created by limited visibility, not an actual condition of reality. The mind tends to separate events so it can understand them more easily, but reality itself does not operate in that separated way. It functions more like a continuous unfolding, where every part is linked even when the links are not obvious. Even the smallest reactions you had, a thought you dismissed, a feeling you ignored, a direction you briefly considered, were not disconnected from the larger structure of your experience. They were part of a broader sequence that was always active beneath your awareness. Nothing existed in complete independence. Everything was participating in a larger flow, even when it felt like nothing was connected. There are also moments where life feels like it resets, as if everything starts over without relation to what came before. But in deeper observation, what looks like a reset is actually a transition point. The structure doesn't break, it shifts. The connections don't end, they reconfigure. The continuity remains intact, but the form changes so completely that it gives the impression of separation. This is why certain patterns repeat in different forms. Different situations may carry the same emotional tone, the same type of challenge, or the same internal response from you. That repetition is not coincidence, it is continuity expressing itself through new conditions. What was unresolved in one layer of experience often reappears in another form until it is fully integrated. Nothing you lived through existed in isolation, because nothing in your internal or external experience is truly sealed off from the rest. Every moment is part of a larger structure that is constantly updating itself through your awareness, your choices, and your responses. Even when you feel completely detached from a situation, you are still inside the same unfolding system that connects everything together. And when this becomes clearer, the sense of separation begins to dissolve slightly. Not because everything suddenly becomes obvious, but because you start noticing that even the most unrelated moments were never truly apart. They were simply viewed from a distance that made their connection invisible. 3. What felt like breakdown was structural recalibration. What felt like breakdown was not a collapse of your life, but a restructuring happening at a level you could not see at the time. From inside the experience, it looked like things were falling apart. Plans failing, relationships shifting, stability dissolving, directions becoming unclear. But what was actually happening was not destruction in the ordinary sense. It was a reorganization of the structure you were living inside. There are moments where life stops behaving in the way you expect. The familiar patterns no longer respond the same way, and the systems you relied on begin to lose their predictability. In those moments, it feels like something has gone wrong. But what if it was not going wrong? What if it was simply being rewritten at a deeper level? What feels like loss is sometimes just the removal of structures that can no longer support the direction you are moving toward. Structural recalibration does not announce itself clearly. It doesn't feel smooth or understandable while it is happening. It often arrives as confusion, pressure, emotional heaviness, or the sense that things are breaking without reason. But beneath that surface intensity, there is a different process unfolding, one that is reorganizing your internal and external alignment at the same time. Some patterns in your life cannot shift gradually. They require interruption. They require certain familiar forms to dissolve so that a new configuration can begin forming underneath. When this happens, the mind interprets it as instability because it loses access to the familiar structure it once used for certainty. But in reality, what is dissolving is not your foundation, it is only the outdated version of it. Even emotional turbulence during these periods is part of the recalibration process. Emotions rise not because everything is failing, but because your awareness is being pulled through layers of transition. The discomfort is often the signal of adjustment, not destruction. Like a system updating itself, there is a temporary imbalance before the new structure becomes stable. What makes these phases difficult to recognize is that the old structure still feels real while it is fading. Your mind keeps referencing past stability, expecting it to return in the same form, but recalibration does not restore the old pattern. It replaces it with a new one that may not immediately feel familiar. That unfamiliarity is what creates the illusion of breakdown. There are also unseen alignments happening during these shifts. Certain things leave your life not by accident, but because they no longer match the direction your system is moving toward. Other things arrive later, once the internal structure is capable of supporting them. The timing between loss and arrival is not random. It is part of the adjustment sequence. Structural recalibration often creates a gap where nothing seems to make sense. That gap is not emptiness, it is transition space. It is the interval where one version of your reality is dissolving while another version has not yet fully formed into visibility. In that space, everything feels uncertain, but that uncertainty is actually the sign that change is fully active. After these phases, what once felt like collapse often reveals itself as reorganization. The pieces were never destroyed. They were repositioned. The path was never lost. It was being redirected through a different structure, and the version of you that emerges afterward is not rebuilt from scratch, but recalibrated into a form that could not exist within the old pattern. So what felt like breakdown was never the end of your structure. It was the structure learning how to hold a different version of your direction. 4. Timing was never random, only unreadable. Timing was never random, even in the moments where it felt completely disconnected from logic, expectation, or preparation. What you experienced as wrong timing or too early or too late was not a lack of order. It was order operating at a depth you could not yet interpret. The structure behind events was never chaotic. It was simply operating on layers that your awareness was not aligned with at that moment. From the surface level, life appears to move in unpredictable bursts. Certain things arrive before you feel ready, and others delay beyond what you expected. This creates the impression that timing is unstable or inconsistent. But beneath that appearance, there is a precision that does not follow emotional readiness or mental preparation. It follows alignment conditions that are often invisible while you are inside the experience. What feels like delay is often a sequencing process that is still completing itself. Certain internal conditions need to settle before external events can safely align with your state. If something arrives before that internal alignment is complete, it often cannot integrate properly into your experience. So what looks like waiting is actually coordination happening in the background, adjusting multiple layers before the moment becomes structurally compatible. Similarly, what feels like sudden arrival is often the point where multiple invisible conditions finally synchronize. It is not that something appears out of nowhere. It is that many unseen processes reach completion at the same moment. From your perspective, it looks instant. From a deeper perspective, it is the result of layered preparation reaching its convergence point. Timing becomes unreadable when you are inside it because you are experiencing only one layer of the process at a time. You see the outcome without seeing the alignment that produced it. You feel the delay without seeing the preparation behind it. You experience the moment without access to the structure that made the moment possible. There is also a tendency to measure timing through expectation, what you think should happen and when it should happen. But expectation is not connected to the underlying system that governs alignment. It is based on perception, emotion, and desire, which operate on a different frequency than structural timing. Because of this mismatch, timing often appears off even when it is functioning exactly as it needs to. Even missed opportunities, unexpected pauses, and abrupt changes in direction are not errors in timing. They are adjustments in sequence. Something being removed or postponed is often part of ensuring that what eventually arrives fits into a larger pattern without distortion. The absence of visibility does not mean absence of structure. It only means the structure is operating beyond the range of immediate perception. There are moments where everything seems to pause completely, as if nothing is moving forward. But even that stillness is part of timing. It is a holding phase where conditions are aligning in ways that cannot yet be observed. Stillness is not inactivity. It is preparation without display. When you step back from immediate experience, a different picture begins to form. You start to see that what felt scattered actually followed a sequence that only becomes visible in hindsight. The same events that once felt misaligned start to reveal their placement within a larger unfolding pattern. Timing was never broken, it was never inconsistent, it was never random, it was simply operating on a level that does not translate into immediate understanding. And the more awareness expands, the more that unreadable timing starts to reveal its quiet structure beneath everything. 5. You were interacting with outcomes before they appeared. You were interacting with outcomes long before they became visible in your external reality, even though at the time it felt like you were only dealing with thoughts, choices, or small emotional reactions. What you didn't notice was that those inner states were not separate from what would later appear in your life. They were part of the formation stage of it. Before anything becomes an event, it first exists as a subtle alignment inside perception, intention, and response. Every time you made a decision, even a quiet or uncertain one, you were already stepping into a direction that had consequences forming ahead of you. Not in an immediate, visible way, but in a layered progression where outcomes begin as internal positioning before they become external reality. The mind usually sees cause and effect as something linear, action first, result later, but beneath that surface logic, there is a deeper continuity where the result starts shaping itself at the same time the inner shift occurs. Even your emotional responses were part of this early interaction with outcomes. A feeling of resistance, attraction, doubt, or clarity was not just a reaction to your situation, it was also part of the process that was shaping what the situation would become. In that sense, you were never just observing your life from the inside, you were actively participating in the formation of its next version through your internal state. There are moments where something appears in your life and feels completely unexpected, as if it came from outside your control. But if you trace it back carefully, you can often find earlier signals, small internal shifts, unnoticed decisions, subtle changes in how you responded to similar situations before. Those signals were already interacting with the outcome long before it arrived in a physical form. What makes this process difficult to recognize is that outcomes do not arrive in a single moment of creation. They unfold gradually in a space where inner alignment and external reality are still merging. During that phase, you cannot clearly separate what is causing and what is coming. Everything is overlapping. You are inside the formation process while also inside the experience of it, which makes the structure invisible while it is happening. Even your imagination plays a role in this early interaction. The way you pictured possibilities, even briefly or without full belief, contributes to the shaping of pathways that later become more defined. Not because imagination directly controls reality in a simple way, but because it reflects and organizes your internal orientation towards certain directions. That orientation is part of what determines which outcomes become more coherent over time. There is also a delay between internal formation and external appearance. What you are experiencing now is often the echo of earlier internal states that have already completed their formation stage. This delay creates the illusion that life is reacting to you after the fact, when in reality, the interaction began much earlier in layers you were not consciously tracking. This is why certain outcomes feel strangely familiar when they arrive, even if you did not expect them. It is not coincidence, it is recognition at a deeper level of awareness, where the internal interaction has already taken place before the external confirmation appears. The outcome feels new on the surface, but it has already been shaped through earlier versions of your attention and response. When you begin to see this pattern, the boundary between before and after becomes less rigid. You start to notice that you were never only waiting for outcomes to happen, you were already in contact with them through the way you were thinking, feeling, and adjusting internally. The experience becomes less about waiting for life to respond and more about recognizing that interaction was already happening in a quieter form. Something subtle shifts. The idea that outcomes arrive from somewhere distant begins to dissolve, and you start to see that you were always closer to them than it first appeared. 6. The invisible layer responded to your inner state. The invisible layer responded to your inner state in ways that were never loud, never direct, and never obvious while you were inside the experience. It did not react like a visible system that gives clear signals or instant feedback. Instead, it adjusted itself quietly around the condition you were carrying within you, your thoughts, your emotional tone, your level of tension or clarity, and even the subtle direction of your attention. What you feel internally is not separate from what begins to form externally. There is a continuous exchange happening between your inner world and the structure of your outer experiences, even when you are not aware of it. This does not mean every thought creates a direct result, but rather that your inner state influences the direction in which possibilities begin to organize themselves. It is a shaping process, not a simple cause and effect reaction. When you felt uncertain, overwhelmed, or emotionally heavy, the environment around you often seemed to shift in ways that matched that internal condition, not as punishment or reward, but as alignment, as if reality was mirroring the frequency of your internal state through situations, delays, or changes in direction. The external world was not separate from what was happening within you. It was adjusting its expression based on that internal condition. Similarly, when moments of clarity or emotional stability appeared, you may have noticed subtle openings in your path. Decisions becoming easier, timing feeling more aligned, or certain obstacles no longer holding the same weight. These shifts were not random improvements. They were signs that the internal condition had changed and the external structure was reorganizing itself accordingly. The invisible layer does not communicate in words. It responds through patterns, timing, connections, and sequences of events that only become understandable when viewed as a whole. While you are inside the process, it feels fragmented because you are experiencing it moment by moment. But from a wider perspective, there is a consistent reflection happening between your internal state and the unfolding structure around you. Even your most private emotional experiences, the ones you never expressed or fully understood, were part of this interaction. They were not isolated within you, they contributed to the atmosphere through which your experiences formed. That atmosphere shaped how events arrived, how they unfolded, and how they connected to each other over time. There are also moments when nothing seems to change externally, even though something is shifting internally. These are not empty periods, they are alignment phases where the invisible layer is reorganizing itself before any visible outcome appears. During these times, the connection between inner and outer is still active, but it is working beneath the threshold of perception. This is why similar patterns can repeat in different forms across different stages of life. The repetition is not random, it is the system reflecting an unresolved or evolving internal condition in new scenarios until the internal state changes enough for a different pattern to emerge. The invisible layer does not force change, it responds to it. When this becomes clearer, you start to notice that your experience of reality was never separate from your inner condition. It was continuously shaped, adjusted, and reorganized in response to it. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, persistent unfolding that was always active, even when it felt like nothing was happening at all. 7. Absence was only the limitation of perception. Absence was only the limitation of perception, not an actual condition of separation. What you experienced as not there, not happening, or not connected was never a true gap in existence. It was a boundary in what your awareness could register at that moment. Reality did not stop. The structure did not disconnect. Only your ability to detect the deeper continuity became restricted by where your attention was placed and how much of the process you could consciously access. There are moments where life feels empty, as if nothing meaningful is moving, as if something has withdrawn from your experience. But that feeling of emptiness is often created by the fact that the underlying activity is operating at a level too subtle to be recognized directly. Just because something is not visible does not mean it is inactive. It often means it is operating outside the range of immediate perception. Your awareness functions like a lens. It focuses on certain layers of experience while leaving others outside the frame. When the lens narrows, the world appears fragmented. When it expands, connections that were always present begin to appear again. Nothing actually changes in the structure itself. Only the scope of what you are able to notice shifts. What feels like absence is often a transition state between two visible patterns. One structure fades from recognition, and the next has not yet fully entered your awareness. In that in-between space, it feels like nothing is happening. But in reality, that space is not empty. It is where reorganization is taking place beneath the surface of perception. There are also experiences where people, opportunities, or directions seem to disappear without explanation. From a surface view, this is interpreted as loss or disconnection. But from a deeper view, it is often a redirection into a phase that cannot yet be understood with your current level of awareness. The connection is not broken. It is simply no longer visible in the same form. Even emotional absence, the feeling of being disconnected from meaning, clarity, or direction, is not proof of actual separation. It is often a sign that your system is recalibrating to a different layer of experience. During this recalibration, familiar signals temporarily weaken, not because they are gone, but because they are being reorganized into a new structure that has not fully surfaced yet. What makes absence convincing is its stillness. When nothing appears to move, the mind assumes nothing is there. But stillness is not the absence of process. It is a phase where processes are not yet expressed in visible form. Beneath that stillness, connections continue forming, dissolving, and reforming in ways that will only become recognizable later. This is why certain answers only make sense in hindsight. At the time of experience, the connections are already active, but not yet arranged in a way that can be interpreted. Later, when perspective expands, what once felt disconnected begins to reveal its internal logic. The absence was never real. Only the timing of perception was limited. When perception expands, what was once labeled as missing begins to appear as always present but unnoticed. The structure does not return. Your ability to see it returns. And in that shift, the idea of absence itself begins to dissolve, replaced by the understanding that nothing was ever truly outside the unfolding process. It was only temporarily beyond what could be seen. 8. Continuity was always active beneath the surface. Continuity was always active beneath the surface. Even when your experience felt fragmented, uncertain, or disconnected from any clear direction, what you were able to see at any given moment was only a small segment of a much larger unfolding process. But underneath those visible segments, there was never a pause, never a break, and never a true interruption in how things were progressing. Life often feels like a collection of separate moments, one situation ending here, another beginning there, with gaps in between that seem empty or undefined. But those gaps are not actual breaks in existence. They are simply regions where the underlying structure is not yet visible to your awareness. The continuity does not stop in those spaces, it simply moves out of sight while preparing the next visible expression. Even when your life appeared to shift suddenly, through changes, losses, decisions, or unexpected turns, those shifts were not isolated events. They were the visible points of a continuous process that had already been building underneath your awareness. What looks like sudden change on the surface is often the result of long, unseen progression that only becomes visible at a certain threshold. There is a deeper layer of experience where nothing is truly separate from what came before or what comes after. Every phase is connected, even if the connection is not immediately recognizable. The mind tends to divide experience into chapters for understanding, but the actual unfolding does not follow those divisions. It flows without interruption even when perception cannot track its movement. Continuity is not something that begins and ends. It is not dependent on awareness, recognition, or understanding. It operates as a constant background process that holds every experience together, regardless of how disconnected things may appear on the surface. Even when your attention shifts away, even when clarity is lost, even when nothing seems to be progressing, that underlying flow does not stop. There are moments where it feels like everything resets, as if a previous version of your life has ended and a completely new one has begun. But what you are actually experiencing in those moments is not a reset, but a transition. The structure is not erased, it is reorganized. The continuity remains intact, but it changes shape so completely that it feels unfamiliar when it reappears. This is why patterns often repeat in different forms across time. The repetition is not random, it is continuity expressing itself through new conditions. Something unresolved, evolving, or shifting within the structure will reappear in different scenarios until it reaches a form of completion. The surface changes, but the underlying thread remains consistent. Even your awareness of change is part of continuity. The ability to notice differences between past and present only exists because there is an uninterrupted thread connecting those moments. Without that thread, comparison itself would not be possible. So even your perception of discontinuity is supported by a deeper continuity that never breaks. When life feels unclear or unstable, it is often because you are moving through a section where the structure is reorganizing itself faster than it can be interpreted. In those phases, continuity is still fully active, but it is operating beneath the level where immediate understanding can form. You are still inside the same unfolding, just in a layer where the connections are not yet visible. Everything that once felt separate begins to reveal its connection. What seemed like unrelated moments started forming a coherent pattern. What felt like interruption begins to show flow, and what appeared broken begins to reveal that it was never broken at all, only continuously transforming beneath what you could see at the time. And now it becomes clearer. What once felt like isolation was never absent. It was hidden continuity moving through every chapter you lived. Nothing truly broke away from you. It only changed form, timing, and visibility until you were ready to recognize it. And as this understanding settles in, the perspective shifts. The story was never random, never detached, never without direction, because even in the moments you couldn't explain, something remained consistent beneath everything. You were never outside of it, you were always inside the unfolding.